I'm Jenny Montgomery.
Hi, Ms. Montgomery. So one of the teachers told me to contact you on mainstreaming, and my project is on mainstreaming and autism, but mostly just mainstreaming. Why do you think he told me you were a good source?
Well, my son Cameron, up until he was 4 years old, had difficulties that we had no idea what to do with him. He didn't learn how to talk until he was 4. He couldn't communicate. He would get very frustrated. God bless him. I remember he would get upset and then he would beat his head on the floor. And we had no idea. We took him to neurologists, and we took him to the UCLA Medical Center, and we took him to Tri-County centers, and everybody said, yes, something is wrong. We just don't know what. And it wasn't until he was in about 6th grade that a friend who had a mutual friend that their daughter had Asperger's syndrome looked at me and said, so how long have you known Cameron had Asperger's syndrome? And I said, well, I didn't until you just said this. And she said, well, Bronwyn has Asperger's syndrome, and Cameron is very much like Bronwyn, so I'll bet he has Asperger's syndrome. And the more research that I did, the more I realized that he had Asperger's. But even before I knew what he had, I was determined that no matter what, he was going to be treated just like every other child, except for given extra time on tests, because the world can be very unforgiving to different individuals in any shape or form, whether it's dyslexia or, whether they have a physical disability, anything. The world can be a very unforgiving place. So I said, well, no matter what, I want him to receive all the services he can, but we're going to push him and he's going to stay with everyone else.
Can you just describe what Asperger's is?
Asperger's syndrome is a form of autism. Say, for instance, if you're looking at you've got a gas gauge, and let's just say empty would be autism. Asperger's syndrome goes anywhere from the empty all the way up to the full. Autism, well, to describe the Asperger's a little more, I don't know as much about autism because Cameron doesn't have it. He's very high-functioning Asperger's. Mostly, he doesn't understand social cues. For instance, I think the first year he was on the track team, Dennis Taylor would say to him, hey, Cameron, and try to do the little fist bump thing and all that. And Cameron would not get very animated. He would just go, oh, hey. Well, Dennis said, I don't think your son likes me. I said, no, he likes you. He just doesn't know how to show it. So I sat down and I explained to Dennis what Asperger's syndrome was. And from then on, he was more patient with the fact that Cameron just wasn't going to react in the same way his football buddies were going to react. But he eventually understood that, yes, Cameron did like him. He just reacted in a way that was unexpected.
Right. He doesn't, what about emotions? Does he understand emotions?
Sometimes too well. Cameron is very easygoing. Cameron is very even keel. He doesn't, well, for instance, yesterday I had a very big crying spell. I was upset about something, and he didn't quite know how to comfort me. But he's a man, and men don't necessarily know what to do with that anyway sometimes. So sorry. For instance, when he likes a girl, but again, this could be any high school boy, doesn't quite know what to do with it. Over the past few years, now I remember from preschool all the way up until 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th grade, I was the president of the PTA at Driffle and the president of the PTA at Fremont, so that I could make sure I was there to push him along. 8th grade dance at Fremont. I made him attend. Now, one thing about autistic people is they do not like loud noises or flashing lights. And there was a strobe light and very loud techno music at this dance. But I made a deal with Cameron. I said, you are going in and you are going to stay for 20 minutes. Don't care what you do after that, but you have to stay for 20 minutes. Drove him frickin' nuts, but he did it. When he was a little kid, when we would be at Disneyland, if there was music or, sometimes even the parades, he would get very like this. He would get very agitated and upset over the music. But interestingly, a few years ago, we started watching a TV show called Supernatural, and it has retro rock and roll. Let's see, what's some of the Boston and Journey and things like that. So Cameron started kind of going, oh no, I know the one that really started. His cousin gave him her Guitar Hero, and he could play Message in a Bottle on Guitar Hero. So he began to go, I like that. And I said, ooh, a light bulb came on in my head, and I said, really? So I started making him listen to Sting CDs. And then the Supernatural show came on. Then when Michael Jackson passed away, I sat, because it was such childhood memories for me, and I listened to all the specials. And he began to develop an appreciation for music. So I bought him an iPod. Now, granted, he doesn't necessarily like any of the, well, he likes some of the current music, but very little of it. He's more, he doesn't want to hear cussing lyrics and, things like that. He just, but it was quite a step forward from the little boy who couldn't stand to hear music. And we laugh at that all the time, because now he can't stand to be without his iPod.
Ms. Montgomery, how do you think his experience school-wise and social-wise would be if he would have had other parents? Like if you wouldn't have done all you have done?
I think of that all the time, because sometimes I criticize myself, and I feel like maybe, other parents have jobs, and other parents have nicer cars, and other parents have things like that, and this is actually my first job, and I have occasionally been upset with myself that I didn't follow that path, but I know that if I had not been there to push Cameron along, that he would be a very different person. I can't remember his last name for the life of me, but there's a young man that's also a senior here at Pacifica. His name is Adrian, and he went to Fremont, and I used to eat lunch with the kids on a regular basis at Fremont. So there would be me and Cameron and a whole group of kids. Well, the kids were sort of his friends anyway, but when I would sit down and have lunch with them, more kids would come over, and the group would get a little bit bigger. And so that helped him to socialize a lot better.
Yeah, I can see it at track. And
yeah.
You just gather everybody.
Yeah, I remember, first couple of days of track, he was absolutely terrified to talk to anyone. But I would make him get out and talk to you guys. So, it scares me to think about sometimes. Like I say, sometimes I get upset that I didn't pursue other avenues, but then at the same time, I know that what I did was the right thing for him, and that's ultimately what being a parent is about.
Right. You do know that you didn't just affect your son, right? You affected a lot of other kids.
I hope so.
So it's not just your son that you made a big difference in. It's a lot.
I appreciate that, because I was all of you at one point or another in my life. My sister had a baby when I was 4, and she wasn't married. Now, back in 1964, they didn't have the child center. Back in 1964, it was, oh my God, the host's daughter had a baby. And I was 4, so the first granddaughter was born. And basically, I didn't really matter anymore. And then my mother drank a lot, and so starting at 7 years old, they left me by myself a lot. I wasn't very popular. I didn't have a whole lot of friends. So there are so many of the composites of kids that I can look at and go, I was you, and I was you, and I was you, and I remember what it feels like, so I don't ever want any of them to feel the way I did.
Past experience, right?
Yeah, past experience. I mean, well, for instance, and there's a young lady that's on the track team right now, and I won't mention her name, but her mother passed away, and she's very... I'm sorry, I'm laughing. She's very okay with her situation, but I know that, like, for instance, on Mother's Day, I sent her a message on Facebook and said, I hope this isn't a sad day for you, but if it is, you know, I care about you, and you can always come and hug me as your mom if you want. And in a way, I thought it was kind of a corny thing to say, but she really, really appreciated it. So, yeah. So, I hope that I have affected other kids, and that's really why I've taken the job here as well, because, you know, my thing is that for any number of reasons, parents are not necessarily able to be everything for their kids. Jobs,
more
like
kids.
I say, in many other kids, a lot more kids. My closest sister was 10 years older than I was, so I was the afterthought baby. And again, you know, my mom started to drink by the time I was 7 years old, and I would take her coffee in bed, and then I was always late to school. I was always cutting classes. Because nobody was watching what I was doing. And there's a young man at the school here right now, and I am doing everything I can to try to reach out to him because he was me. So,
Ms. Montgomery, did Cameron being like that, is that why you only had one?
No, I have 2 kids. Cameron has a big brother.
Is that why you didn't have more?
No, I would have liked to have had more, but Cameron's dad and I separated when Cameron was a year old. Even though you guys still always see us together, we, after a few years of fighting back and forth, we made sure that, you know, ultimately we have these kids and we have to do what's... Lucy burned popcorn.
Oh, did she? Okay.
We have to do what's best for the kids.
I'm sorry.
So we do what we have to do. We take family vacations together sometimes, and it is the hardest thing in the world, let me tell you. But, you know, again, you do what you've got to do that's best for the kids.
When Cameron was small, was there a lot of teachers and principals telling you that he had to be in restricted
Yes,
classes?
yes. I can remember in AYSO even, in fact, this one moron coach, I want to say Cameron was in 6th grade, maybe 7th, and he got this one coach that I always prepared the teachers or the coaches by saying, look, Cameron has